YouTube now. Turn this down. All right, it's hooking. It's connecting. All right, we are live. All right, well, welcome everybody to the show. It's going to give us a minute. It's got to get a few things adjusted here. So everybody hang tight. I'll give everybody a couple minutes to come into the room. And then we will get started. All right, let me just go ahead and edit this real quick. And we'll get going. All right, everybody just hang tight. Just waiting for some more people to come in the room before I start. So let's just give everybody a few minutes here. Get going. All right. All right, so I want to welcome everybody to the show. Before I begin, just going to run through some quick announcements before we bring in our guest. And then we're going to get into it. All right, so first and foremost, just to update everybody as far as upcoming classes. I did send a notification out, and I'm just testing the sound also. So somebody in the chat, just verify the sound is good, please. Just want to make sure our sound is good. And if any issues with the sound, type in. So somebody give me a thumbs up for a sound check is good. Can you hear me okay? Everybody good? I don't see anybody confirming. Somebody type in if they can hear me. I'm not hearing nobody type in, seeing anybody. Can you hear me? Type it in. Okay, sound is good. Thank you, Kiona. Appreciate it. All right, so I'm just going to run through some quick announcements, and then we'll get into it. I did send a notification out. We rescheduled the left-hand path Norse mythology and runes class. That was, thank you for, appreciate everybody confirming the sound check. That was scheduled for yesterday. Some stuff came up last minute. Had some family stuff came up. So that's rescheduled for this upcoming Wednesday night. Everybody that is on Patreon should have received a notification with the update, with the time change. I just want to put that out there also here in case you didn't check your Patreon page or app. So again, I want to, let me go through that, give you the exact dates and times. I'm pulling it up just to make sure we're on the same page. So that will be this upcoming Wednesday, which is April 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the left-hand path, Norse mythology and runes class. And then that Friday, which is 2 days later, which is this Friday coming up, the Rite of Arachne, the spider goddess. That is for Patreon members only, tier 3 and above. That is a ritual we will be performing live. And those who are on tier 3 Patreon can participate in that with us. That's on Friday night, April 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Saturday, April 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Klapathic Yoga Meditation and Kundalini Awakening class, number 5. That's number 5 in the series that's ongoing. There will be new classes and events for the month of May that'll be posting shortly. So again, just stay, if you are on Patreon, stay updated on your app and for any changes, times, things of that nature. Also, I encourage people who are not on Patreon to check out Patreon, patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. Again, patreon.com /Baniti, BANITI. Also, again, as we get further in the year, we like to keep promoting this early because October will creep up on us quicker than we know. We have the Journey of the Black Adept Conference #5. This will be the 5th straight year we're doing it down here in Hollywood, Florida, which is in Fort Lauderdale, right close to downtown. It's close to everything, transportation, Airbnbs, hotels, the beaches, restaurants. That will be a 4-day event counting the meet and greet. It starts on October 27th. We have a meet and greet that night, 8 o'clock. Then Friday and Saturday, workshops and classes all day from about 9 to 3:30 with a ritual on Friday and Saturday evening as a group. We have a ritual that's being put together, especially this year by Brother Will and Leslie out of Minnesota. They're going to be putting together a nice ritual on the beach on that Saturday evening. And then we finish it off Sunday with a open question and answer discussion forum, late Sunday morning, early Sunday evening, and that concludes the 4-day event. So hopefully we see some new people out there. Last year was going back live, doing it in person after the 1 year of doing it virtual with the pandemic. We had a good turnout. More than likely it'll be at the same location. And it's always the last weekend in October. So hopefully we see some new people out there. It's a great event. It's good to come out and see other practitioners on this path that you can just kick it with, have some fun. And obviously we do some work together and grow. So that'll be October 27th to the 30th. If you want any information on how to register or sign up for that, shoot me an email, khnum19@gmail.com. And then last but not least, if you are interested in a spiritual reading or a spiritual consultation, shoot me an email at khnum19@gmail.com. I will send you a full price list of the different readings, Klapothic demonic readings, deity readings. If you want to see what spirits walk with you, shadow work readings, which is always a good place to start. People always asking, where should I start? I don't know what to do. What's the best place to begin? A shadow work reading is good for that. Also, readings with Santa Muerte and the spirits of the dead. That's another one. Egyptian oracle readings. And there are others. If you want a full list, prices, shoot me an email. Everything is in the description box on the video here. You'll see a way to make that contact. Also, check out the social media pages, Primordial Chaos 9 on Instagram, Primordial Chaos on Facebook. Also, check out the Primordial Chaos podcast, Anchor.fm, Spotify, Radio Public. It's pretty much available on all major podcast platforms. All right, that's pretty much it. Wanted to just run through that. I want to welcome everybody. I know we don't usually do a show on Sunday night, but we have a special guest with us this evening. So I want to bring her in. If I want to just make sure your sound is good, just let's bring the Cosmic Serpent in. We want to welcome her to the show. Just unmute yourself and let's just test your sound just to make sure we're good.
Let's see, how's that?
Yes, you're good. Can everybody hear her? Let's just get a confirmation from everybody. Everybody hear her?
You guys hear me?
Yeah, I think you're good.
Okay.
All right. All right. So we want to welcome you to the show. Well, before we begin, obviously introduce yourself, let people know where you're from. And then also we'll ask you again in the end, also what platforms people can connect with you at. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us a little about yourself and where we can reach you.
Okay, so I am Cosmic Serpent. I am Cosmic Serpent on Instagram, and I do have a TikTok, which is the same name. So it's the.cosmic.serpent. And I am from the East Coast. I've been a practitioner for quite some time. I say that I started my journey out of high school, and it's because I've always been interested in the occult, but just hadn't had like the tools or the foundation to be able to practice. And I will say that formally I've been practicing, hardcore for the last 10 years. And my journey has been one that I've cultivated. It's been an evolution after evolution. So that's the basis of how I got into it.
Okay, cool. And then again, just to let everybody know watching, as we go through, this interview and do this show, you guys will have an opportunity to ask questions. And there'll be three ways. You could call in. You could actually come in live. If you want to ask a question, you would have to put your email into the chat, and I can send you the link when we get to that portion of the show. Or you can just, if you are a subscriber, you can type in your question straight here on the YouTube page, however you feel comfortable. And at that point in the show, we will forward those questions over to the Cosmic Serpent. All right, so I brought the Cosmic Serpent on. Obviously, came across her on Instagram. As you know, on Instagram, you start linking up, see people's pages, other people connect, et cetera. They see your page. So as I was going through the page, and as I go through other people's pages, one thing, the thought of doing it and kind of going forward and having some more of these shows with some female practitioners is the lack of female presence, in my opinion. Not that there's not female practitioners, there are, but there's just a lack of presence of female practitioners on this path. We always hear about what the men are doing, this and that, and that's cool and everything. So I just figured, let's flip it up a little bit. And that's why I encourage you to go check out her Instagram page, Cosmic Serpent on Instagram, so you can kind of see, what she's into, kind of what she's been doing, et cetera, so you can get a better picture of it. But also what makes it unique, being a melanated female practitioner, we'll add that to the mix. And there's a very small presence, in my opinion, also of that. So what I want to kind of first get into with you, Cosmic Serpent, is let's talk about first the point where what spiritual path did you come from before you came on this path? Let's start there. Where did you come from prior to this?
Oh, so prior to this, I was Christian, raised Christian, Southern Baptist, if you want to classify it as that. So,
Sure.
no like deep denominations or anything. It was just the Southern Baptist, very traditional upbringing, very traditional background in that aspect. So that's where I came from.
Yeah.
So you can imagine.
No, definitely. Well, yeah, Southern Baptist. Though I know now from your, I know there's a lot of people who call themselves or Southern Baptist. Did you come? Was it? Because I know Southern Baptist can be very male dominated, chauvinistic related. Did they allow females to have a presence in the church? Because I know some Southern Baptists won't even let females teach or evangelize. Was it that kind, or was it more liberal?
Right. It was a more liberal take on the way that there was worship and there were, people that were coming to speak. And I think that's because of the nature of where we were. Like, we're in the country, but we're not like super down south. We're not super duper deep. And
Right.
I think that there was a very strong matriarchal, presence in that church. So we did have female pastors, female teachers, things like that. So that was actually a good thing to see some women in power, that were actually being able to tell people things, teach people things, and they would seek their counsel. So
Right.
that was definitely positive.
Cool. So you would say you're more near the Mason-Dixon line. You're not like deep South kind of.
Right.
Right. I got you.
I'm in the Bible Belt, on the Bible Belt, but not Mason Dixon. No, not deep south.
No, it's crazy because you bring that up, because I know people in that area, you can be, whether it's, DC, Baltimore, kind of when you get to that whole area, it's like, it's either the extreme, more kind of northeastern effect, or like you say, it could have, depending on where you're at, that southern effect. So at what point, because I always like to ask people this in general, but especially obviously you're here live on the show, you're the guest. At what point did you start to abandon the Christian upbringing, as far as at what age or what point in your life would you say you started to maybe feel different about things, think different? What was the spark that, before you even got into the cult, what was your first move? Like what was the thing that sparked you to go another direction, is what I'm asking you.
Well, I will say that I've always had interests outside of what everyone else was practicing and doing. So I know that I knew at an early age, and a lot of this is contributed to my father, who's also a free thinker. I knew at an early age that if everybody is doing the same thing and everybody is agreeing on the same thing, that sometimes there might not be the best outcome for that. If there's no opposition, there has to be opposition. So I remember being always in, like, I'll say Sunday school and like Bible school classes, and being the child to question things, and then being told after like a litany of questions that might not get answered or may get answered, like, who you think you're talking to? Your child. I'm gonna go, God is everything, just be quiet. So, it's like that. And I think that as I started to become more self-aware, but not only self-aware, just aware of what adults did.
Right.
And I noticed that the adults that were around me, now I had some amazing teachers and people that were mentors and things like that coming up, so I will never discredit them, but some of the, I guess, the main figures in my church, and then in other places and other pastors and preachers, I would see some of the things that I wouldn't even dream of being a friend to a person that did some of the things that they did. So I'm like, how can you lead when this is your behavior? And then what really separated me was there was an incident that involved a young girl that was my age, and very young. And there was a young girl that involved my age, and the pastor did what he did and then was back in the pulpit the next Sunday, not my church, but another church, and everybody was just treating it like it was nothing. That was the last straw. Like, the only reason I went to church is to please other people around me. I was done, because it was just all an illusion that I had been just drinking deeply from, because I wanted to, please my family. So, that's how that went.
Okay. No, and that's interesting because I know everybody's story is a little different, but it always seems a lot of us, and obviously we're raised here in America. Most of us here in the West, obviously we're influenced by a church upbringing, majority of us. And it always seems like we have that similar part of the story where we all, obviously because of our upbringing, we had to go to church to please others. And then you're talking about this incident here with the pastor, which unfortunately is very, very common with these dudes. Because that's pretty much what they do. They prey upon people. So when this is going on, that being the last straw, as far as the ideology, what inquisitive questions in your mind about religion, let's say, did you just question the whole like creation story, this whole God thing? Like, outside of, obviously that's kind of messed up. That would probably jolt anybody to want to leave. But as far as ideology and doctrine wise, what questions did you have in your mind that you felt like just were not being answered, that you needed to shift and go another direction?
That's a great question, because I think that in order to, especially in this day and age, I think that in order to be not just specifically Christian, but to be a part of the big three, to be a part of like a super duper popular organized religion, you have to suspend from disbelief in some way. So you have to just say, no matter what I think in my mind or feel in my heart, or I can research, I have to wipe that away and put in that place that this is God's will, or whatever this is. So it's a blanket statement that kind of covers everything that is a gray area, or something that your mind might just, as a human brain, just question. So I think my unanswered questions that led me to, finding different friends that had occult vibes, and they had books that I didn't have any resources to be able to get. I think that the first thing a lot of people always say, and I know this was me, was, okay, so the whole suffering thing, we have a loving, kind, gracious God that allows, people to be sick and ill and die, and there's homelessness and there's all kinds of stuff, so where is he? And then, and then that evolved into, well, if we're to be judged, then there is no right. Everything is condemnable, in a way, through your thoughts or actions. So, you know, it became to be a thing like, okay, is God a tyrant? Or is he a concept that I don't understand? Or is he not real? Or is he somewhere else? You know, so it was kind of like that.
Right. That's interesting. And again, that's usually to some degree a spark for a lot of people, because just the whole thing that doesn't make sense. So as you shifted, as you shifted out of religion, I know obviously where you are at this present moment. We'll get to that because that's obviously stages of growth. What was the first thing that you dabbled in that you would label? I mean, it don't necessarily have to be like hardcore cult. What was the first level of consciousness? Were you into, like, some people got into the comedic conscious thing, or what did you shift to immediately after you left the Christian upbringing?
Well, that's the funny question because I did not go the way that a lot of my friends went, and I think that I kind of did it the opposite way. After I started easing my way out of the church and being in the spaces of more people that had more of a free mind, a free level of conversation when they talked about religion and things like that. I was a nerd and in the drama club in high school. So I I was hooked up with some some of my drama club friends, and my first expression of developing my own practice, besides the things that you do when you're young and you have these visions and dreams and you go through these processes of like, oh, maybe I'm Claire something, but with a child mind, you always have these beautiful revelations anyway. But like coming into myself to be able to say I am starting a practice, I started with Crowley. I started with Thelema. I started with like chaos magic,
Okay.
like Peter J. Carroll chaos magic, not like what we're doing. It's like I
Gotcha.
started with people that practice like ceremonial magic and the whole hoo-ha, and that's where I got my kind of my sea legs in occult.
Okay. Did you when you were messing or researching and studying Thelema, did you ever go to an OTO chapter and go to a Gnostic mass? Did you ever participate in a Gnostic mass or no?
No, I was afraid. I was afraid to do anything that they were. I didn't want to get too deep in it, and I'll be completely honest because I was the only person of color that had anything to do with any of this.
Sure.
And I'm not deep South, but I'm South enough that where if there's something that you are being you're involved in, where your limits are. So I would never go there with them, but I would always want a book. Like I remember this guy that was in the club with me. He bought me the Necronomicon, and I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. Like I got my first copy of like the Satanic Bible, and like I got like Liber 777, and I was like, ooh, like what I mean. Like this is the good stuff. Even though, to be honest, because of the way I started, I had no idea. Crowley is very cryptic. So if you have no idea, if you have no basis in the occult, you're going to be reading what sounds like fantasy,
Jibber jabber, right.
yeah, just gibber jabber. So
Yeah.
that's why I say that, it was
Yeah.
that was where I started, but
Yeah. And the Book of Law is that's a very cryptic book.
right.
You're 100% right. But you said something interesting. Now, I want to go back to something you just said a few seconds ago. So this being new to you, you being a female, a melanated female, did you feel, I don't want to say like you had to be kind of on the down low about it? Did you feel pressured to kind of like, maybe do this discreetly? Because obviously you're a female. Number two, you're a melanated female. And three, like you said, you're kind of on that borderline, not deep South, but you kind of got South. So what at that time, like what was your approach? How were you feeling? Did you feel like you were doing something taboo? Did you feel something new and exciting? Like kind of what was going through your mind at that time? Because that going from Christianity to that, even though that may not be a hardcore cult left-hand path, but it is a cult and it is a serious 360. So what was going on at that time? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh, that's a great question. It was very taboo. It was very like this is something that's just for me, that I know that none of my other friends are into. I can still be, happy, bubbly cheerleader cosmic on this level. And then I am like going home and like performing the,
Right.
banishing rituals, you know what I mean, for
Right.
myself. And it was like, I knew that I had a thirst for occult knowledge, and I knew I had a thirst for like finding something that was inherently me. And nothing had really rung my bell at that point. Like nothing had really hit. Like I went from being, kind of like an ostracized, nerdy, like teenager to like, you know, finding my way and finding my group. And then it was like, okay, so I feel like this, I have these beliefs. What do I put, what can I equate this to? So it was very private. It was a very private thing. I was lucky to have a free, open thinking father. And my mother was just the happiest angel on earth. She didn't care about anything as long as, I was happy and, things like that. So I did have to hide a lot of what my beliefs were in certain circles. I did have to, after years of not going to church, something will happen and I have to go in and I'm like, okay, I hope I don't burst into flames, but I'm in here. Like, you know what I mean? Like stuff
Yeah.
like that. And like, I would have to. And then as I got deeper into it, and then I realized, first of all, I did it backwards. I went into practicing a science that I didn't have any foundation in. And then when I started to look into that, I'm like, okay, so I can cultivate my own path to the point where I'm comfortable not being around anybody that this is before the internet. This is before, you know what I mean? This is before
Yeah.
like Instagram and all that stuff.
Yep.
And we used to have like lectures on, now I'm telling my age, but we used to have like lectures on CDs and things. So it's like,
Right.
I can find the level of comfortability in not having anybody around me,
Okay.
so it was like that.
Awesome. Yeah. Now, did you notice before we go, did you start to feel, because some people talk about this too, did you feel like friends, people you knew, did relationships change? Did you feel like you looked at them different? Did it affect the way you interacted with people? Because some people describe their social circles changing because maybe now you're thinking a different way, you have a different system of personal beliefs. Did that radically change, or you kind of just were rolling with it at the time? Nothing really major changed that time as far as, friends, acquaintances, social circles. Any drastic changes there when you were going through this?
I will say that the core people that were around me, my immediate family, who I'm in love with always, and I love, to death, and
Nice.
my friends, my really, really good friends that are still my friends, the ones that were not interested or didn't want to have anything to do with that, literally ignored it. Like they would think that it was like, I remember, and I won't say her name, she'll know if she watches this video, but a family member of mine came to my house and I have altars everywhere. You know what I mean? I got a big ancestor altar, then I have an altar here, an altar there. I got a big, inverted pentagram. I got Baphomet and all this stuff. So she came unexpected. This is back when I used to hide my stuff, when I used to like cover it up if
Right.
somebody was coming that, I thought might be put off by it.
Sure.
And that person came and she was like, so you like Halloween? And we kept it like that, that was it. And I think that because I would never discredit my upbringing. I would never discredit any of the family, the women that raised me. But we
That's awesome.
did, and we were raised with a level of I'll say discretion that led to like, if this is what you're doing, this is your business. If it
Right.
does not involve me, then I don't have anything to do with it. I will tell you what I think and I'll leave it there. So I think my circle started to change when I really started to become the person that was, how you go through the phase. You go through the phase of like learning, and then you become disgusted with what some people believe in.
Right.
You go through that phase like, how could you? What in the what? You know what I mean? And then you go through that, and that pushed people away. That pushed people away because I Virgo and don't really have too much of a filter, so it was like that pushed people away. But my core group has always stayed with me, and I found some amazing friends. So yeah, that did change a little.
All right, that's awesome. And it sounds like from listening to you talk earlier, your family, your mother and your father, it's good to hear, because unfortunately there's not a good track record of that with as we get into our adulthood. It's good to hear you come from a good family background, myself too, and I was fortunate, mother and father, good family. So that's always a plus when you got that support, even when you're going through changes. So let's talk about now. So all right, so Thelema, Crowley, you were kind of messed around with that. Where did that next take you as you started to dabble in that? And also the second part, I'll let you answer the first part, and then tell us who were some of maybe the authors or maybe teachers or lecturers on YouTube, who are some of your influences that maybe helped in shaping your journey to where you're at. So after you started dabbling in that, what was your next stop? Where did that lead you to?
Well, I'll just be I'll be transparent with it. So I left that mainly because I left school and I went to college. So I started going to HSBCU. So I went to Norfolk State. So it was like, okay, now I'm surrounded by people that are not only free thinking, but they are radical, and they are teaching about our history, and they're teaching about how our ancestral blood connects us to higher realms, and how we can think on an ancestral level to be able to reach the inner parts of ourselves. These concepts that I never really got when I was younger, just outside of my own reasoning, and things that my uncle, who was a 5%er, when he came back, those little things, that that
I
I
know it
got
well.
from
I know the 5% well, yeah.
so those things I got from him. But it was like when I got to college, it was like, all right, now, wow. So we are not only like there are people here that are venerating the Orisha. There are people here that are working with um, you know, darker spirits, and there's people here that are working with Egyptian magic that are people of color. So I'm like, oh wow. So I mean, I had that opened up to me a bit through my own research, but I had never been around anybody that was practicing. So
Right.
that's when I found, that's back when I found Bobby, and I found like people like Panic and things like
Okay.
that. So I started to listen to those types of Dr. Delbert Blair,
Okay.
like people like Dr. Delbert Blair was definitely my top, just because I am very like, I just love how practiced and like the coercion, like everything is like it's supposed to be. I love that,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then definitely one of my favorite teachers. And like there's so many, but when I got to college, I started to have those expression of a different part of me. And
Right.
so I went into what I'll say is a learning period where the
Mhm.
only thing I did was just absorb. I just absorbed, because I'm not one of those people that are going to front and say, oh, I've come from a long line of witches, or I'm a Orisha, or I'm a this, or I'm a priestess, or I'm a priest, or whatever.
Right.
If I'm not going to say that, because that's not me. That I found this path on my own. I'm cultivating my own path, and it's okay if you don't have it like in your blood, or your ancestors did it.
Right.
And
Right.
so I had to learn. And so I did. I went to school, and after that, I started what I would call the goddess tradition. And the
Okay.
only reason I say the goddess tradition is because I had a lack of a home again, because I was learning about the Orisha, I was learning about African spirituality, I was learning about aspects of like, practices and of other cultures of people of color, but I still didn't have a home. I didn't have a teacher. I didn't have somebody that I actually could say, teach me and I will practice this effective. So I kind of crafted this goddess tradition where I would just pull aspects from the goddesses that would resonate with me and then imbue my spirit with them and work with them and their attributes. And I created this whole thing. And that's what led me to then working with the Goetia. So that's where I landed there.
Okay. So this is interesting, and I hope everybody's listening, male and female. So let's just recap real quick. We got a Baptist Christian background. And I want people to know, I mean, this is good because I want people to see that all of the things we go through, because some people will always make statements like, oh, I wish I didn't waste time being a Christian, or I wish I didn't do this or that. And I'm trying to get people to see all of these stops that we make on our journey are for a reason. It's all part of our growth to get us where we're at now. But we look at you. You're obviously, everybody has their own unique story. So we're focusing on your unique story tonight. So you come from the Christian background, Baptist upbringing, more, as you say, more of not super traditional, strict, more a little more liberal. There was female presence there, pretty good upbringing from your parents and your family. Then you go dramatically shift into Crowley, which that's a huge shift, the Lima. And then
right.
Yeah, that's a huge shift.
I
And
was
then
like 93s all day. Like I was one of those people. Seriously. It was like, oh, greetings, 93. I had my
90,
star.
yeah.
Like I was big time, in high school. It's funny, but that's what happened.
That's a big shift. And then as a melanated Black female, you go to a historical Black college, right? So very, very common and normal to come across Black consciousness, traditional African spirituality. So then that's another shift because, well, see, what I'm listening to is obviously your spirits, you're going through different things, you're getting the experience under the belt. So very common, you would obviously research that, study that, have some experience with that. And then another shift, then you get into, like you say, the goddess tradition path, which is, tapping into the power of the female spirit. So talk about, when you were in that, because I know there's different aspects of that. Was that more, I don't know if new agey is the right way. Was it more new age, metaphysical? What aspect of that? Because there's different aspects of that. Just so the listeners are clear, what exactly were you working with at that time when you say the goddess tradition? Like, what were you doing?
Oh, it was totally new agey. It was totally new agey. I won't sugarcoat it. I won't make it anything that it was. It was total. I mean, I was listening to Helen Demetriou, like, you know what I mean? Like I was listening to these women that were teaching about the goddess tradition because and like you said something really interesting, and I've heard people say that before, and I think that that's also a part that you need to embrace when you're on your path, is like you've never wasted any time. Like if I didn't know, if I wasn't brought up Christian and then I didn't go through some of those things, I wouldn't have I maybe wouldn't have the intensity of wanting to study text and just be able to translate things for my own, because that's what Bible study was, you know what I mean? Right. Like I wouldn't have reverence for sacred space. That's where my reverence for sacred space, even though I create my own sacred space and I am my own sacred space, I wouldn't have any reverence for that, because that's what happens. You go into the sanctuary, your persona, your everything changes, you're in the presence of something different. So Christianity, those things can travel with you. But back to what you asked me, about about the goddess tradition. Like, oh yeah, it was totally new agey. It was new agey. It was cherry picking from different goddesses and creating this regiment of following. But what I was doing was building my foundation, because that's where I learned to follow the moon cycles. That's where I learned to grow with my intuition. Like if I come into this room and I feel like all these things need to be changed around, what's going on? I learned, I'm like, okay, that gave me my antennas. Because working with different goddesses and picking up on their aspects is to be of them. And that's where, like, as now, we're using the term deific masking, but that's what that was, just being, I want to be the goddess. I'm going to be this, amazing thing. And so I took that, and it had aspects of Wicca in it.
Sure.
It had aspects
Sure.
of, it had aspects of very new agey things. And that just stopped ringing true for me one day. And then I stopped because it didn't seem balanced. It didn't seem balanced. It just stopped ringing true for me one day. And I was like, all right, next step. So,
Okay. Right. So this is interesting. And I hope everybody's listening to show you, as people journey through life and get to where they are at the moment. This doesn't just happen with the snap of a finger. I mean, this is, and look, we're only at the early stages of the story. So look at what the cosmic serpent, some of the different various pantheons and spiritual systems up until this point she experimented with and tried, and was still not where we at, right? And this is what I'm trying to tell people. This is a journey. It's work. So after that, where did that lead you now? So that you kind of grew out of that. Where did that take you next?
So that brought me, and like you said, just to kind of like, just to reiterate what you said, it doesn't make you more powerful if you've been working in I know people that have just entered the path that have taught me things I could have never even dreamed of. You know what I mean? Like potency is synonymous with inner power. Your inner power, you know what I mean? Like it's not about like how long you've done something. There's no hierarchy when it comes to that. Like there's people that will say, oh, well, I'm a tenured witch, or I'm an elder witch. What in the world? Like that to me, it's like, okay, well, if you're still doing the same old thing that you were doing 10 years ago, I don't think you're as powerful as some of these new kids that are coming out, So anyway, so just after that, leaving the goddess tradition and leaving that aspect, it was like I still didn't have any teaching, real in-depth connection, because what turned me off from Orisha and working with African spirituality in high school were the Hotep people, and that they were the ones that I was trying to find a home with. But it was like, okay, so what you're doing is replacing God with Oshun, and I don't like it. So, you know what I mean? I'm like, I am trying to get as far away from dogma as possible. So I want to do it myself. I don't want to be told. I just left that system.
Exactly.
I just left that system. So there's not a way for me to be able to be in that, I'm not going to be able to thrive there. So that's when I picked up a Michael W. Ford book. And again, it was on the recommendation of a person that I had met, and that person knows who she is. It was on a recommendation of, somebody I had met, and I started reading about Luciferianism, and I started reading about Satanism and spiritual Satanism and Levian Satanism versus, romantic Satanism. And then, started reading about that. And then my first step in that, and this is like coming up closer. So my first step in that was Goetia. And then I had a background in Crowley. So I picked up, some books on that. And then I started to kind of draw my own conclusions between what the Goetia really were and how I could work with them to enhance my life, but also to bring me closer to something that I could practice. Like, this is what I'm going to do, because when you get older, you're like, all right, cherry picking is great, but I need to stick with something. I need to have a home somewhere. So that led me to working with the Goetia. That was the first step. Before I said, oh, I'm a Luciferian, or oh, I'm a Satanist, or I'm a spiritual Satanist, I just worked with that pantheon.
That's interesting. All right, so now obviously we get to the meat or the path, kind of to the moment, to a degree, of where you are at the moment, right? So you're now obviously, as you start working with the Goetia, you mentioned some of Michael W. Ford's work. So now we're in the door of the left-hand path. the occult, right? Right now you're really starting to tap in, right? Explain to us, because I always explain this to people. Can you, and you can, if you want to share some specific instances, I mean, you ain't got to get into detail with a ritual or anything, but like, obviously, can you explain to people the difference when you start working with those type of spirits and energy, as far as the changes that started to happen in your life, some of your experiences, and maybe you can, like, again, just briefly and indiscreetly use an example of one and compare that to some of the stuff you prior were involved in. Explain to some people some of the changes and the effects that stand out to you as you started to navigate now, down the left-hand path to the occult, if you want to share something.
Yes. So I think that it was good that I landed on the Goetia, because the Goetia to me is a very complete system. And when I say a complete system, I mean, when you're working with a spirit, people always say, I work with the spirit. What do you mean? What are you doing? You're working with the spirit. Are you just like thinking about it, or what are you doing? So the Goetia is a complete system in the fact of there are aspects of each Goetic divinity. I call them divinities. There's a aspect of each energy that resonates with us in this form. So they're not just these made up things,
Right.
There are aspects of us that will resonate with us in this form. And the difference, and to answer the question, the difference in working with this is that this working with anything external is not necessarily left-hand path, but it gets you really, really, really close. And what I mean by that is, like, okay, you can pick up a book and say, I'm going to learn how to invoke. I'm going to learn how to work with spirits that are of an infernal nature. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they have a very different energy ring on them. It's nothing like anything else, because it's already in you. If that's what you're supposed to be doing and that's your path, it's going to ring in you, and it's going to cause doors to be unlocked and things that are going to happen to you. Once you enter, you cannot exit. So once you're in, you're in. Even if you stop practicing for years, you still have that tunnel. Those tunnels are open. So it's like, when I started working that system, it not only led me to being able to have an expression that is so close to, the beautiful expression of, like, I always think that invocation and like ecstasy are very, very synonymous, so that are like being in a state of just pure bliss and all of these things where I can be clear and hear my own, my higher self.
Right.
But working with them led me to working with my daemon. So
Okay.
that was the transition. It was like invocation of spirits that are externalized, opening up parts of myself. But what about me?
Right.
And that is where the Luciferian doctrine started to come in.
Okay. That's
Mhm.
interesting. All right. So now let's kind of shift to, let's kind of, we got a good picture. You painted a good history. We kind of see where how you got here, but let's get a little detail to kind of what's been going on, where you're at.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the work you're doing. I want to also discuss, obviously we gravitate or maybe find an affinity to other things more than others. But let's first talk, you mentioned altars earlier. So let's talk about that. And then I'm going to ask you something we talked about earlier. I didn't forget, it just popped in my head. I'm going to ask you about the name. I didn't forget that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. But you mentioned altars. So explained, and I always find this interesting with people in general, especially, as a female, what kind of altars do you have set up? What is it that in your path that has led you, obviously, because I always say a person's altars are a reflection of where they are on their spiritual journey. I don't think altars should be altars. They should be very personal. They should have a significance to the practitioner. and they should represent something very spiritual to that individual. So tell us a little bit about how you have your altars set up, and kind of maybe some consistent practices, or kind of what you do with them. You ain't got to get into detail, but talk a little bit about that. Let's start there.
Okay, so I won't say my altars are traditional by any means, but in a black magic, satanic witch kind of current, they are on track. So I have my working altar, and my working altar is where my get down happens most of the time. You know, that's where if I'm doing if I'm in a formal working, I'll sit there. It's my place of power. So I have a personal place of power that is imbued with my energy, my altar cloth from all these years. You know, I got a new Baphomet, but you know, I have my space for my Baphomet, and like, you know, I have my representation. So my working altar, like I said, is not traditional, but it's also not like it used to be. I used to have chaos altars, which were just all the aspects of me just you know, just exploded all over the place. And that was, I think that's a great thing, but you also evolve out of that when you start to like funnel down and narrow down your practice, because you don't need all that.
Correct.
You already know what you are. I don't need 1,000. I mean, I like the unicorn symbol, and you know, I don't need 1,000, all that stuff.
Sure.
I have what I have, but I have certain altars set up to deity. I have an altar for Lilith.
Okay.
I have a beautiful space for her that I go to when I'm working with her, when I need to be empowered. I have a mirror altar space. So that is dedicated to myself and my daemon and my divine feminine aspects. So it's just a big mirror with, you know, all my perfume and all my makeup and all my stuff there. I've created that space as an altar space because, you know, all of that those are spiritual tools, you know, in addition to what we use them for on a mundane basis. And then I have my goetic altar, and my goetic altar is separate from everything. Like there's certain spirits that I've worked with that do not want to share altars. And that's personal gnosis, yes. You know, it's not the same for everybody, but there's certain spirits that do not play well with others. So I have an altar that's set up for my goetic workings, if I'm doing path working. And then I have a space for divination that is just for tarot, oracle readings, things like that.
Okay.
I have one more thing. And one of my most important altars, which is right in front of me, is my ancestral altar.
Oh yeah. I was gonna, okay. But I want to back up. And as a female, I want you, from your experience, because females and Lilith, this is always interesting because there's always this one-sided interpretation of Lilith that kind of bothers me. I talk about it all the time. I'm not going to waste my time and energy on it right now. But you, because it seemed like obviously you have everybody, all of us again, have patriarchal or matriarchal or specific spirits that we've established stronger connections to, relationships, etc. It's just part of the path, right? So obviously you have a special altar for Lilith. As a female practitioner, and again, without getting into detail, it's no way that's not necessary. What is your connection with Lilith? What kind of work do you do with her? And like, what have you learned? How's it helped you grown? I'm always interested to hear, because Lilith, and I say this all the time, she is not an easy spirit to connect with, contrary to belief with what's out there. There's a lot of superficial bullshit out there. So I want to know if you can share with us your connection, how you made that connection, and kind of what you have, how you have grown. Because if you have a separate altar for any spirit, in this case Lilith, there has to be a special connection there, right? So talk a little bit about that.
So I do not have a conventional view of this energy at all. So there is not very much that I can say that would be commonplace when I am talking about my connection to the spirit of Lilith. I mean, I don't resonate with the biblical Lilith. I don't resonate with the, you know, the aspects, even though those are all her stories and those are all her aspects, those are all of her myths.
Right.
You know, it's a beautiful combination of, you know, a journey for her as well. You know, she's transformed from demoness to mother to everything. You know, she's been everything. So my connection to her is in my opinion, in her raw form. And I mean that by her being a dark elemental spirit. She is the representation to me of the other side. She is the representation to me of the void in a feminine aspect.
Right.
She is the representation of the beautiful connection that you have to the divine. She is the, you know, she permeates the earth. She is she is a beautiful representation of, I'll say, without saying too much, you know, of what my personal thing is, but I'll say that she is at the core a part of everyone. She's a beautiful earth spirit. You know, she's an earth spirit. She's a spirit that is an initiator. So she's an initiator. So she opens up doors for you. She will show you parts of yourself that you are not necessarily in tune with. I've worked with Lilith in a gradual sense, and a lot of people that I've seen write about her kind of get stuck in one place, but she will evolve as you learn. You know, any spirit,
Sure.
you know, as we venerate them and as we learn, they evolve with us. So as I've grown, you know, it went from being, oh, I'm gonna be empowered by this spirit because she refused to submit and I'm not gonna submit, and you know,
Right.
all of these things, to being, okay, so are you embracing your oracle nature? Are you embracing your connection to your deeper recesses of feminine power? Are you touching the parts of you that are murderous? Are you touching the parts of you that just want to see the world burn? You know what I mean? And then it's an initiatory thing. So I've worked with her as a very personal, I'll say a darker elemental spirit, if
Okay.
if that makes sense.
No, yeah. Now you use the word initiator, an initiatic type of spirit. That's interesting because we know Lilith is definitely one of those spirits when you make the connection, transformation and change, right? That's huge. But it can be very tumultuous sometimes. Did you have, as you continue, not have, because as you continue your relationship with Lilith, she can, like you say, uncover parts of ourselves, and sometimes it's not the prettiest parts of ourselves. And she will make you face it, right? She will make you, deal with it head on. Did or can you recollect? Because everybody's connection is different, so that doesn't mean you did or you did not. But have you really ever dealt with any like intense moments of change with her? Like, did she really just? Have you ever experienced an aspect of her, let's say, that you had something going on in your life and something needed to be changed? It was brought to your attention, and it can cause disruption. It can be something very uncomfortable because there is that aspect to her, but everybody connects different. So was there any serious things in the past or the present in facing that? Because she can be an intense form of shadow work, uncovering the hidden self. So anything stand out in your work with her that maybe you could share?
Yeah, I don't want to be. You always use the word spookism. You know, you always use the word like like it's like, you know, this is
We
two and
know
two.
it's subjective. It's all good. Go ahead.
It's like I don't want to, you know, come and go into the clouds with this.
No, I got you.
But working with Lilith brought out the absolute worst in me. The absolute worst in situations that I knew better, that
Okay.
I didn't have the self-control at that time to be able to change or be what I should have been, but she brought out the absolute worst in me so that I could be grossed out by myself and change. Honestly, that's just the only thing that's like the best way I can put it. without being too personal, like she working with her, and if the thing about that energy is either she's with you or she's not. There's not a time where you're like, oh, I think that she's here, or I think that I might be working with her. There's no such thing. So
Right.
either she's there, she does not like to be commanded. That's why I don't like her sigil in a circle. You know, I wear her sigil, but I don't like it encircled because that's representation of the energy coming and going as it pleases. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And it's beautiful, but yeah, just without it, and you know, in my process of working on myself continuously, I'm working through some of the stuff that she brought out of me that it led to places that I had pushed away.
Right.
Like, you know, like you're like, where did this even come from? So she led me down a road of figuring out why I did things,
Ah,
brought it out, made it very apparent, and then took me to a place of like, why are you doing this? You know, why is this you?
and I'm glad you were honest about that. And I'm glad because no, I mean, I got to be real about that because unfortunately we always hear, again, it's not to be judgmental of people. So if anybody listening and it applies to you, don't take it personal. It just is always this superficial book rehearsed shit you hear with people, and we're dealing with Lilith, and I don't ever hear stuff like that on a regular basis. There are some of us out here who are real and legit with it, and they're honest about it. And you just described an aspect that's very real and connected with Lilith, that myself and many others can attest to. And that's what she does. She is the great initiator through what? Through change, every self-realization, and everything you just described. And I keep telling people it's not always, if the word we want to use is pretty, it's work. There are intense moments of this shit. You have your ups and downs. But as I always say, the rewards, obviously are much greater if you can work your way through that stuff. All right. All right. So we talked about the Lilith altar. You have an ancestral altar, any Goetia working altar. And I'm big on this, so maybe you can share this, and then we're going to talk about. Didn't forget, we want you to something interesting how you came up with the name, because I always say if you have a name, something you. No, it was important because people take names and they attribute these titles, or people have avatars, and I always tell people you should have an avatar, a name, an attribute, whatever you want to call it. It should represent something that you're connected to, number one. You should be able to live up to the name, number two, and it should mean something. You don't just take names because you like them, they sound cool and all that shit. I'm totally against that, because obviously what people don't realize is you bring that energy upon yourself, and then you're almost obligated to live up to it, and that can be a little detrimental, which is a whole nother story.
Yeah.
So as we talked about, you have these working altars. Share with us, because I'm big on consistency, right? This is important, not just because I say it's important. It's important for everybody to be consistent in what they do, to get results. So briefly, like, what do you do on a regular daily basis? And just so you know what I mean, like throughout the week, a daily basis, because this also is tied into how we utilize our time. Do you have like daily practices? Do you have a certain thing you do when you get up in the morning, or weekly practices? I want you to, if you do, share that with people, to show that being consistent is important. So what regular things do you do on a daily and a weekly basis is what I'm saying.
Well, my practice has evolved. It used to be a very like I don't say I won't say that it was regimented, but it was very kind of like I had no measure. I was doing things that I knew that I should do, but there was no measure of if they were actually working. It's just something that, but then I had to switch my thinking to say, okay, I'm doing this for maintenance, but I also need to be
Right.
feeling this. It's not just another, you're not going and doing a meditation and then you're making your coffee. Like, it's not the same thing, so I had to get out of that mind. I have Virgo mind, very rational, so I'm just like, all right, I got to split this. So what I'm doing now is I do a demonic invocation during the morning. So I invoke my daemon. So I'm working with my daemon.
Okay.
It's just the connection to make sure that my sight is clear and that my road is clear and that what I am involving myself in is in alignment with my daemon. So, my daemon is the thing that I talk to or touch first.
Right.
If I am in some sort of working with a spirit, then I will venerate that spirit. So I do like the incense on my ancestor altar. I will pour out water or wine or whatever I'm doing for that time. And if I'm working with a spirit, I will venerate that spirit. So I have my goetic altar. If I'm doing a path working or inner working, I'll tend to that. Whatever offering is there, you give whatever offering you're in. And then I light a candle for Lilith. It doesn't burn all day. It's just something in the morning that is it's just to honor that spirit.
Right.
And then that's it. So that's it for that. And then, when I am done with work every day, like the people in my life will be able to attest to this, like I have to meditate.
That's good.
I
That's
have
good.
to, because there's no way that I can shift from work mode into being able to have downtime mode without some sort of a break. Like I can't stop work and then directly go watch television or, be scrolling. I can't do it because I'll never get any rest. So I do a small meditation in the evening and that's pretty much it.
No, that's good. I bring that up because, and you just said something that's very important. It's always good to start and begin your day with something like that. I say this all the time. And in that end of the day meditation, you should analyze your day briefly. What did you succeed at? What did you fail at? You're right, because a lot of people will just, like you say, leave work or something, and they'll go shift into something that's completely nonsensical, waste of time. Because one thing I'm also always big at talking about on the channel here is managing your time, right? That's important because that usually is the reason why most people are either consistent or not consistent. And that's usually the basis of why they don't get results or they do get results. All right. But good stuff.
It's everything. That time management is everything. Like you were talking about, I won't share it here because I know it's for the other people, but there's some practice, there's some things that you can do that will give you an aha moment to be like, let me add all of this time up in a year. Yes. You know what I mean? How many hours did I spend scrolling or how many hours did I spend, shopping online and stuff like that, like
watching TV, like you said, watching TV, that's the number one waste killer, but go ahead.
Add them up. And at the end of the year, you're like, oh my goodness, what could I could have had a whole nother job.
That's right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like I could have had a whole nother project, but like you were talking about, you do have to have entertainment. You do have to downtime. I'm an advocate for rest. Like you have to rest. Like you have to do all of those things, but idle time sometimes is a breeding ground for like, it just, I guess it just attracts more. Do you know what I mean?
But you remember that saying when we were kids, right? We all heard this, even though we know, I hate to use that term, the devil. Remember your parents would say, idle mind is the devil's playground, right? Remember that?
Right.
Well, just flip the script on it. That's essentially what you're saying. But yes, you're 100% right. Yeah.
Because it just invites more, and you're not necessarily going to be able to stop that cycle. It is a cycle.
Exactly. All right, let's now the name. Let's talk about what was the motivation. Obviously, what you use for your social media pages, what everybody knows you by, those who do know who you are, and obviously to new people here who may not know who you are. Obviously, it's very important for myself and to others. What is the motivation and the meaning? Why did you choose the name the Cosmic Serpent? Why is it that's the name you like to go by? So share that with the people. What was the motivational factor behind the name, the Cosmic Serpent?
So that hasn't always been my name. And that the reason why it changed is because I changed. You know, my name used to be something else, which
All right, you can't say that without sharing it with us. Come on.
oh man. Well,
It
my name
wasn't,
used to
please
be
don't say like a raw asset. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
no,
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 it's okay. We all had them. We all had them, but go ahead, share some. No, because I'm only saying that, even though I'm clowning and having fun with it, I'm saying that because of what you just said.
right.
Usually the name identifies where you were at in your spiritual journey. So I'm saying for you to share that. So I guarantee it's going to correlate where you're at in your journey, but go ahead.
Oh, totally. It totally correlated where I was because my old name used to be Obsidian Soul.
Okay.
Obsidian Soul. And the reason why I chose that is because I was the most guarded, the most secretive, the most introverted. Like I was just like, I'm keeping everything out. I'm doing this. I do not want anybody in my circle. Like I was protected. I was guarded, you know. It was like I was one of those people that were overly protective, you know, like, oh, I gotta do my wars. I gotta constantly do this and banish and banish and banish. And it was like that. Now it was a long time ago,
Okay.
but that was a reflection of where I was.
Sure.
And it was because that I was just coming into myself and embracing the fact that I've always, I guess, I guess in a way I've always been, I guess to say goth, but there wasn't really like, it really wasn't like a name for it. Like there was no name for it. Like my dad used to say, oh, who do you think you're, Janet Jackson? Like you wear black every day. I'm just like, this is what I like, you know, but where I was living and the people that I was around, there were no goth people. You know what I mean? Everybody just knew that I had a darker aspect about me, my dress, my aesthetic, you know, my what you present.
Sure.
So that was the first name long time ago.
Right.
And when I started researching, the Cosmic Serpent came from, and I know the ladies out there know this, there is a chapter in the Great Cosmic Mother, which is like a Bible to me. You know, that book is there's a chapter in that book called the Cosmic Serpent, and the aspects of the serpent in reference to how it reflects the feminine is something that I totally correlated with. I mean, I'll say that my spirit, my totem, my essence is of the serpent. You know, that's just me. You know, that's just it. And from not even a technical sense, that's where it started on the ground floor. But the Cosmic Serpent is a representation of the below and the above kind of reflecting. So it's a reflection of, people say, duality, but it's also a reflection of both halves as a whole. So cosmic, that is the outer world, that is the upper level, that is the heavens. And the serpent represents like the womb and the cave and the earth and like the cycles of the earth and like this foundation. So bringing the heavens to the earth, like manifestation, creation, you know, all of those things are the aspects of the Cosmic Serpent that I drew on. When I said I wanted this to be my name, I wanted it to be imbued with power. I wanted, when people saw that, they would, you know that I was about that. I was about, you know, like manifestation and creation. So that name has life in it to me, you know, so that's why.
All right. No, that's good. And now people know. Now, obviously, to those who do know you and may not know you, on your Instagram and your social media platforms, I want to tell you what I've seen, and maybe you can, you know, it's my perspective, obviously, and maybe you could shed more light on it. It's just my perspective. And also, Raven has also put in your link tree with all your, where you can just click it and see all your pages, that's a good thing. So
Thank
for those,
you.
yeah, for those that want to check out the platform, just click that link. But I know coming across your social media pages, there's a very vampiric aspect to what you represent. And this is just my opinion. I want to be clear to everybody listening, and obviously to you. There's a very witch sorcery type of. There's that goth element, but not that Euro goth element. That's not. It doesn't come across like that. Because there's that very mainstream gothic, and that's not how you come across. Obviously, you have videos on there with actual serpents, so you actually have obviously an affinity with snakes. So there's a connection there, a literal connection, and a spiritual connection. So it seems like you're very rooted in, and that's where that Lilith energy, obviously, and that Lilith connection comes from, because there is a vampiric mask of Lilith that is very, very intense spiritually, very transforming, and brings the practitioner to a very high state of awareness. There's some creativity, obviously, when you go check out the Cosmic Serpents page. There's some stuff on the arts and music. I think you have Expressed Yourself. I think I saw a belly dance video on there, a short clip. You have some music stuff. And one thing I'm big on when I look at people's social media pages, when they put music to the background to some of their clips, which you've done, which a lot of people do, it also shows a lot of the expression. And you're very vast with the music. You're not one-sided with music. I see you can go from, it could be R&B, hip hop, to radical rock, new age. I mean, it could be anything. So no, it's interesting because it represents what the individual and how they're expressing themselves. So I bring that up to say, maybe you can share. It seems like there's a very influence with that vampiric gothic type of energy, right? There is obviously the serpent energy is very obvious, and that witchcraft, sorceress type of energy. So what is your influence? Any specific paths that are connected to that you are interested in, or that influences you? And now everybody's saying they're going to go check out your page. And what was the name of that book? Because some people want to get that book. What was the name of the book that motivated the name that you took? Can you put that out there?
Monica Saju. It's SJOO, I believe. I will correct that, but it's called The Great Cosmic Mother.
Okay.
And it's basically a super thick book, but it describes the origins of the feminine in history. It describes the origins of feminine in Western culture, as far as esoteric knowledge, occultism, but also in shamanism and ancient practices. So where the feminine is displayed, this book gives you a really good picture of that. You know, it's incredible. Like, it's a must read. It's a must read for women on this path, because if you are not empowered before you read that book, you will be. Once you get that book, you'll be like, oh, so this is what this means, you know, and you'll be able to like draw some comparisons to your own life and cycles.
Okay.
But to answer your question about some of the themes on my page,
yes.
I used Instagram. I use Instagram as kind of a journal. I also use it as a platform to find some like-minded people, but I can express myself with the aspects that come in. And I think that the sorcery, which aspect is definitely a part of me. You know, I live a spiritual life. Like, I'm always in the flow. So when you see things that are totally different from the post that's yesterday, that's because that's how I woke up. You know, like that's what's happening. And I think that using your intuition and being able to kind of make a funneled attempt to be able to pinpoint what's going on for the day helps you like gauge your cycles. I do call myself a divine feminine sorceress, and that aspect of me is working with the aspects of the divine that I connect with in magic, you know. So I will use the ability to channel That's one thing. You know, I use my ability to have a strong intuition. When we cycle, we use the benefit of our cycle. We use the benefit of these beautiful, like our womb being our second mind. Like that's divine feminine practice that I put into my actual practice. So, you know, I come at it from an aspect of, you know, me being, of course, the center point, but it's very heavy on, you know, feminine expression.
Right.
And as far as the vampiric aspects of that page, that is an aspect of me as well. You know, those are some of the aspects of my matron, of Lilith. You know, she is
Sure.
a vampiric goddess. And there are some things that I've touched on and studied. It's not who I would say. I won't call myself like a vampiric sorcerer or a vampiric witch,
Sure.
because I don't know enough. But what I will say is that I have incorporated some of those practices and use them to build what I do for myself. So
Sure.
yes.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's funny. Well, not funny. That is a good, like you said, you do kind of use it as a diary, because you do use it as a form of expression. And from some of the clips and the things you post, that's very true. It's an outlet, and then that's how some people use their platforms. Also, just for corrective purposes, so we Libra Spirit and Raven put the book in there, The Great Cosmic Mother: Rediscovering the Religion of Earth by Monica Saju and Barbara Moore, or M-O-R. Libra Spirit also says there's not a lot of copies in print, might be hard to get.
Yeah,
But
this is my old beat up copy.
oh wow, yeah, the thing looks like, well, put some work into it there. All right, so I mean, yeah, this all right. So we see where we're at. We see the info, and again, I would encourage people. Everybody has their own perspective, so obviously go to the pages, check out her social media platform pages, and obviously you will see a lot of the stuff there that we are talking about. All right, so let's shift to something a little different. We're going to go for a little bit more, and then we'll take some questions. I'll put the information if you do want to come in at the time that I say, because I know we've been bouncing back and forth between about 45 to 50 people. When I say the time, if you want to come in and ask the Cosmic Serpent a question live, I think I'll keep this simple. Forget putting the number. If you want to come in, you're in the chat. Just put your email in. I'll send you the link. You don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to be seen. If you got warrants and shit and people looking for you and you don't want to be seen, just keep your camera. just keep your camera off. It's really the same thing calling in. You're basically calling in, and it's just no picture. So rather just to keep this simple, so we don't have to do all that crazy stuff. There'll be two ways. If you want to ask a question live, you'll type your email right here in the YouTube chat. I'll send you the link directly. And then you can come in and ask your question. Again, just keep your camera off if you don't want to be seen. You'll be in the waiting queue room. I'll bring you in. If you don't want to bother with that and you just want to ask a question straight to the point in the chat, just type it in the chat. That's simple, all right? We're going to do that shortly. Just have a couple more things I would like to discuss with the Cosmic Serpent. So let's now talk about the female experience a little bit on a personal level, about what you might experience and deal with. Obviously, we all are affected by it different. But as a female, in my opinion, just from seeing it, knowing other female practitioners over the years, just people, acquaintances, etc. How do men react to you when, let's just say, when they find out kind of what you're into? What do you deal with in that arena? Do they become frightened? Do some of them get intimidated? No, because this is real deal. So your experience, again, you ain't got to get detailed, but just as an overall, what can you share? This is more so for females watching, because myself as a man and other men, we don't know what that's like. So what is your experience with that? How do men react to you when they kind of, I'm not saying you go, oh, here I am, I'm this dark black magician, but when men kind of start to see, you know what I mean? Like, what is your experience with that? Like, just share if you can, like, what do you deal with when you go in regards to that?
Right. So there's a very clear picture of how it will go. A lot of people that are on this path, a lot of women that are on this path will tell you firsthand that they are the type that have to date or be with or experience or have in their circle men that are also with the shit. They have to have men that are also on this path, you know, because it's very difficult. I will say that that's not entirely true. It there are levels of I'll say acceptance that are different for people that actually care about you. You know, people that actually love you. They won't necessarily be like they'll have questions or you can inform them and they might be intimidated or they'll just come out and tell you, I'm scared. I don't know what this is. I've had people
Right.
tell me like scares
Exactly.
me. What is this? So, you know, and then there's also the level of um I'll say this. On this path, you do have to make yourself your own priority. When you are sharing information, when you are being in the public eye, when you're taking advice from people, things like that, like you need to make yourself, especially for women, you have to make yourself your own priority because I don't blame men for anything. There are some men that have helped me greatly on this path, and they have been mentors and they've been great resources.
Right.
However, I have been looked at as far as me and my physical, just being a woman, like you can be a conduit, you can be a pawn, you can be a inserted kind of thing,
Right.
but the knowledge that comes from you, I need to give you. I need to funnel that through you so that you can be the mouthpiece, and also you can't possibly have an occult history or background because Black women don't study the occult. What do you know about it? You know, and that hasn't necessarily. Now, people of color that I've come across, they are ready to build. They have a great relationship with themselves, so they can talk to me about things like that. But some other people that I've come across, they're like, "What do you know about chaos magic? What do you know about this? What do you know about that?" I mean, I'm trying to, it's not all, but I've been shunned out of some satanic chats and you know some circles that won't really give me an audience. And I don't think that that's something that bothers me. I also think that the beauty of being on this path is to work through some of those things. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Yeah, the beauty of being on that path, the path as a woman is to work through some of the things that we externalize. You
Right.
know, if I continue to say in my practice every day that I can't do something because the patriarchy this, or I can't do something because men that, then what am I doing? You know, this path is about removing victimhood, period.
Correct.
So, you know, no matter what has happened, we do have to forge ourselves in the fire to be able to say, well, I stand with what I believe in and this is what it is, but I can work with that because of everything, you know?
That's true.
Mhm.
So now we talk about that with men and then obviously females, right? We got to shift to that because I've seen also, uh, females can be very cruel,
Oh yeah. Oh
especially
yeah.
to each other. Yes. So
Mhm.
we talk about the man, and then what I also want to discuss is because the other thing I see in some of these conscious servants, and I know we touched a little bit about that discussing the show before coming on, is then you have these uh, females that have so much scarring from bad relationships. They take on this, and you don't come across like that at all, and I don't see anything like that in what you represent. But they come off with this, all women rule and men are the fucking worst things since sliced bread, and men have ruined the whole fucking world. And usually that's because not all. So I don't want nobody to get all riled up, but not all. But it just seems like they go to the extreme with this. Everything is the divine female, and we're going to rule the world one day. And then it turns out when you really talk to them, it's just they've had a real string of bad relationships. So let's talk about how do females react to, more so females that really aren't on the path, right? We're not really talking about females that aren't on the path. And you said something interesting, and I want you to elaborate on that also. I know I'm throwing like 3 different part questions at you.
That's okay.
But do you believe to have successful relationships, whether it's just on a friend level with females, or, because we've talked about this here on this channel many times, another problem people have in life in romance relationships is people are completely on different pages. So the question I'm basically posing is, can you have a successful relationship with a person on this path, a love relationship, and they're not completely on this path? Your thoughts and experiences on that too, in addition to what is your reaction when you run into females? How do they react to you in regards to that? That's what I'm getting at, okay?
Sure. So I think it's entirely possible depending on what you want to get out of your relationship.
Okay.
I feel like it depends on if you are happy with being on 2 different pages. Maybe, that person believes in something different and you have your beliefs. If you have your space and that person has their space and you're completely happy with what meets in the middle, then yeah, you can have a fulfilling relationship in that aspect. But if you want to be able to, I guess, express in the physical the dualism and the synchronicity that we're working through, we're trying to achieve here, we're trying to achieve being the one thing that's all things. So we're trying to achieve being both at the same time. We're trying to achieve branching the masculine and feminine within integration, true integration, from not just that standpoint, but from, a physical standpoint as well in the mind. And if you want that, that's a whole deeper level, that you can touch when you communicate and you're with someone or you're working with someone or you're friends with or partner with someone that also is doing the work as well, because it really takes away the whole, I feel like when I've talked to people experience, it takes away the confusion because you're both trying to figure each other out, figure yourselves out. So you have more of a clear way to communicate, to say, whereas, people that are on 2 different pages might say, I don't understand you, I don't even understand myself. You will have, I guess, the ammunition to be able to have clearer conversations and to really be transparent, because you've done the work on yourself and that person's doing it as well. Right. So, I think either way is capable. You're capable of succeeding either way.
Okay.
But to answer your second question, as far as females going, I know we were talking about this. Because I've done the work on myself, I am received and I have interaction with women that are not just on this path, that are fruitful, that are beneficial, because I take what I can and I don't give a vibe of like comparison or competitiveness or like, jealousy or anything like that. Like I had to work on those things within myself because, somebody will say, oh, all women have that. Like, no, you don't have to be that way in order to work with it. And it's like I've never been that girl, but I've also had aspects of that. But I'm the girl that's like, what do you mean you don't get along with women? Right. You need your sisters. Like you have to have your sisters. Like we're communal people. Right. We're supposed to be together. It has not always been that way, but it took work,
Sure. Okay. No, that makes sense. And before we take some questions and stuff for you, can you share with the listeners, what are some, I know you mentioned the one book, what are some books that have been influential that maybe you can share with listeners that have helped you and maybe they can help other people? So If you want to bust out a list of those, I mean, if you want to throw them up on the screen, and we might have some of them, but maybe you can share with listeners some books that have been influential in what you do.
The Kabbalion, definitely. The Satanic Bible, New and Old Version. There's a revision that Michael Aquino did that I don't really hear a lot of people talking about, but it is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
If you ever get a chance to get a copy of it, it is absolute beautiful writing. It's gorgeous. I'll talk about the books that I have my hands on now. There's so many. As far as the feminine goes, The Great Cosmic Mother, there's a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. That's a book of stories that now I can't remember who wrote it. Do I have it? No, I don't have it. It's somewhere. If I had known we needed a book list, I could have brought them, but When You Run with the Wolves is a beautiful book of a combined book of stories. I love Danielle Dusky. So Danielle Dusky writes, I'm a poet, so I like to write beautiful, long laments to goddesses and, long, beautiful, hymns almost. And Danielle Dusky is she has some Wild Woman wolf medicine books that are excellent in that aspect. Very poetic. There's so many. I now they're all escaping me. Can I
No, that's just some of the ones off the top. No, that's some good stuff you're sharing. Now, as far as because you mentioned the Goetia, any specific books with the Goetia that stand out that you can maybe throw out there? Maybe we'll go by some of the stuff that you said, and then maybe any specific books that you can say have helped you along the path with the Goetia, for an example. Anything stands out?
I think that the Dictionary of Demons, and then the Goetia book, the first Goetia book by S. Connolly, is very good. S. Connolly, she has some excellent material. She has so many books. There's Goetic magic. There's prosperity magic. There's hexing and cursing. She's done a whole series of books that are based around demonology and working in those pantheons. So she definitely led me to because there comes a point in the Goetia, and when you're working with that system, that there's nothing else besides gnosis. You can read 1,000 blogs, you can watch 1,000 videos, you can listen to unverified gnosis from people all day, but you're not going to get anything out of it unless you invoke. You have to invoke. You have to work with them in order to learn, because what's on what's mainstream is a description of these entities that is one a cult. So when we say a cult, we mean hidden and gruesome on purpose. You know what I mean? To keep people out. And there's nothing. Sometimes when you get to a point, there's no correlation between what that deity or that goetic spirit or that demon was to what you are experiencing. So I do like Connolly. There are, of course, Michael W. Ford books. There's Luciferian Doctrine. There's so many books that he's done, and I have them, but it's I can't place them all right now. But he's an author that I like as well. So.
Yeah, somebody found the author from the first book. I hope I'm not butchering this name. I'll just try to pronounce it the best I can. Clarissa Pincola Estes, Women Who Run with the Wolves. So thank you. Raven found that. I know there was Jessica Lee was looking for it. Anyway, we got that. So that's in the chat. And then what about, because we actually discussed the Lilith, what books influence you? What authors in your research and study with Lilith, any specific books stand out?
With her, I will say that let me see. If I could think of a book that stands out, I would say, why is her name escaping me? I love Ascendeth Mason. Ascendeth Mason is who led me to a lot of the initiatory workings that I've done with her.
Okay.
She's moved to a lot of structure and building my own rituals surrounding working with Lilith.
Yes.
And she's also given really great descriptions in the books that she has written of her realm, of her aspect. So Ascendant Mason was probably my go-to when I was doing research, and will be my go-to. I love how she writes. Very poetic.
Yes. And Lilith, the Dark Feminine Archetype is a great book I would recommend in regards to Asenath Mason. Yes. All right. So what we're going to do, I'm going to paste the link in the chat. It should have all the information. There it is there. Hold on. Let me send it. All right. So that's the link. If you want to come in, click that link. That's how you get in if you have a question. Again, it is, if you don't want to be seen, you can turn your camera off. Just click that link. I just posted it in the YouTube chat. If you got a question for the Cosmic Serpent, if not, you don't want to come in that way, you can send a direct question right here in the YouTube chat. So I would encourage everybody to go ahead and start. If you have questions, let's go ahead and do that now. I will continue on until I see questions or somebody come in the chat. Don't be shy, people. That's why we're here. There's plenty of you here. I know you guys ain't just sitting here listening. So if you have a question, now's the time to present that question. All right. I know other people are typing any books. The link again is right there in the chat. All right. So I'm gonna give you guys some time to click that. Now would be the time. I'm gonna keep telling you to do it forever, because then we will move on to something else. All right. So also what I kind of wanted to run through. So we got a good pitch, and I wanted people to, again, I wanted people to see that, look, this is work. This doesn't just happen overnight. And obviously listening to your story and the various things that you've been through, the various different experiences, kind of what led you to here, again, testifies to that. And that's the important thing. One thing I want to bring up while we have the time, you were mentioning, we were talking about, and I didn't forget, we were talking about ritual robes, right? And you described something unique about that. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that until people get the courage to start asking some questions, because they're just sitting here and there's plenty of people in here, but go ahead.
So we're talking about ritual robes, and you're talking about how having your own ritual robe is a very important practice, just to show reverence to the self, and, you know, just to consecrate your area in your mind, and, you know, just kind of play on that that psychodrama, like really driving it in, like, you know, this is my sacred space. But I have a very she's a new friend, but she's great. She's online, and she is a spiritual Satanist, and she was wearing this beautiful veil. And I was thinking about veiling, and I was thinking about veiling in other cultures. I was thinking about the purpose of veiling and the freedom in covering the hair, the self, when you are in communion with the divine. So I'm not saying that I'm worshiping the divine in here. So it's to show reference, but I've started to veil. So I have a couple different pieces of material. I have some silk. I have what I'm using now is like a crochet. It's one of my mother's old like crochet shawl throwaway.
Right.
And it's black, and it's perfect. The thickness is perfect. So you're shielding the eyes because you're zeroing in on the concentration. You're telling your subconscious that I am purposefully shut. That's why when you tell people to meditate in silence and in darkness, you know, it's the same thing. Like you're proving to your subconscious that you can do this without any distractions. Like why they put a blinders on horses, you know, like no distraction. So the veiling is also an inherently feminine aspect that really pulls me into, you know, the I guess the serenity in communion, you know. And it's not in worship, but it's communion with my daemon, with my holy guardian angel. You know, it's a beautiful thing.
Right.
Mhm.
That's interesting. That's interesting. All right. So we do have some questions for you here. We got somebody trying to come in also on the Zoom. So the first question, let me back up here. This was from Nick Sorcery, Nyx, NYX Sorcery. She asks, what are some ways to connect with Mama Lilith for a beginner? And so can you share that?
Thank you, Nix. Thank you. So to connect with her for a beginner, I would say that the way that I started to connect with her as a beginner was to research her, like just to start reading about her myths, to start reading about her stories, how she developed in certain cultures, what her origins were, how people the contrast between Lilith and Inanna and Ishtar and Erishkigal, how all of these goddesses have been used synonymously. Everybody decides that the burning relief is Lilith, but it's really a combination of goddesses. It's a representation of a combination of goddesses. So learning about her, for beginners, I would say research. That's the first thing, because when you put yourself in the current, you'll start getting information and you'll start getting subtle signs of what you should do. So I don't think you should offer. The one thing that I will say, and I'm not an expert, this is just my opinion, is that when you initially start working with Lilith, do not offer her blood first, ever. Do you know what I mean? That's just my opinion.
Yes.
Also, for a new person, I would say to find a system that you're going to follow. If you're going to try to be an initiate, follow that system. Be consistent with it, because I know that there's been times that I have fallen off the path and not been doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And the fear of, because of the dive that she takes you on, the fear of her not being your guide is going to like give you restlessness. So consistency, because she really does enjoy someone that is like putting in the work, in my opinion. Black mirror scrying is a good way, not necessarily an invocation, but Black mirror scrying, you can use her sigil and just do some light, like staring into sigil, but I would not necessarily consider suggesting that you invoke until you were 100% ready, because
that's a good point.
the whole thing.
I agree. That's a good point. And something you said also to add, just to add to it, I think working with sigils, meditations, and like you said, obviously one of the most important things, and that's important. The basics. Do your research. Have your information, your knowledge. That's important. But you're right. The invoking, you might want to hold off on that until you feel comfortable. But you're right. Scrying is, meditations on sigils. Yeah, that's all good stuff to get acclimated with the energy. That's very good points. Okay.
Thank you, Nix.
Yeah, good question. This one is a little bit of a broader question. So I don't know how you want to read into this. Just the name is kind of funny. I'm weird, you're weird. Question: what does it mean when you start dreaming of different deities? Are they wanting to work with you? That's more of an opinion question, so we have to be clear to that person. But in your opinion, have you had any experiences with that, dreaming about deities? And do you think did you interpret it as that's a sign to work with them? That's kind of the question.
Right. So on this path, my objective, and what I think that is very important that people focus on, is that interpretation is everything. So interpretation is everything. What a dream is to me, to someone else might be something completely different. A butterfly floats by, oh, that's my great great granny. To somebody, that means that they are being blessed by the goddess, whomever, whatever. So I think that if you are having dreams about a deity, to research that deity to see if that's a correspondence of them, because not all deities work through dreams. Like there's not like there are certain aspects of certain deities that are known, or like that are they can come to you in dreams. They will do that. There's certain pantheon members of the Goetia that are specifically working with you through dreams. We were talking about Lilith. She is one that will meet you on the dreamscape because she is it's a psychic link. You know, your connection. Like people say, oh, she manifested, or I don't see her. It's a psychic connection. You know, you're talking, it's telepathy type thing. So like if you're working with the divinity, or if you're having dreams, find out what the dreams to you first. Take away the fact that whomever that is trying to call you, because that is how people get thrown off. Like, oh, I seen a bunch of flies, so the all's above must be around. Come on, that's not how it works. Yeah, so you know, what you should do is break the dream down, take away who you think it is, break the dream down, and then if you have some current reoccurring themes, if you keep your dream journal and you have reoccurring themes, then you might say, okay, all right, this might be someone reaching out or something reaching out. But don't jump the gun, because you're going to miss. Because your subconscious is trying to tell you something, and it's not always an external thing.
Correct. And something you said just about a minute or two ago, just to elaborate further, when you mentioned, because if you are having those reoccurring dreams about a specific deity or spirit, just to that same person's question, usually when you're inspired to work with a deity or a spirit, and especially sometimes in a situation like that, I'm not saying all the time, when you research, for an example, what that particular spirit represents, that could be a telltale sign that whatever's going on, you need that spirit. There's something going on in your life that's connected to that you can get answers to. So let's just say you're just so I'm clear on what I'm saying. Let's just say you're dealing with a lot of mental or emotional blockages. You might be seeing constant dreams of Kali or Sekhmet. Just to keep it as simple as I can. So, and just like the Cosmic Serpent said, break that dream down. It's never what it appears to be on the surface. So it could be, that it could be, or let's also simplify. Maybe you're doing a lot of reading at that moment on that spirit, and that's gonna, be stamped in your mind. It could be that too, but it could be a multitude of reasons for that. Because that was a very vast question. All right, the link is there. If anybody wants to come in live, I know Adversarial Divine Innovations, you were trying to come in. If you want to come in, you can go ahead. I'll see it, and I'll bring in. Let me see what else we got in here. All right, this is also kind of a not really a question. This is from Hollow Vegata. Not really a question. Any advice? It's not really a question, but it's pretty broad. Any advice for a complete novice would be greatly appreciated. Any thoughts on that?
Well, a complete novice to like the left-hand path, if like what we're talking about. So like if yeah.
Let me just could you kind of maybe just hollow the gate, and maybe you can kind of that's a good point. Can you maybe, you're saying on this path? I would assume that's what you're saying, but I don't want to assume for you. So maybe you could type down in, are you talking about on this path in general? We'll come back to that in a second, just so we don't waste time assuming. What else we got here? Comments. Some compliments for you. Nick Sorcery, NYX Sorceress, thank you, beautiful goddess. Jessica Lee says, Cosmic Serpent, you are so on point. What else I see here? I think that's the gist. Just waiting for, yes, so that was the question. Hollow Gator says, yes, as a novice on this path. So if you could elaborate on that. He did clarify that, or they did clarify that.
I think the first thing that, and I wish that, you all, hindsight is like the clearest sight, right? So it's like, okay, it won't take you as long to get to hit your stride if the very first thing you do and you solidify it is why. Why are you even doing any of this? Like, what do you believe this will do for you? practically. What do you believe this is going to do for your life? What do you want? Be real with yourself. Like, do you want to be a millionaire? Are you doing this because you want to, you know, be famous, whatever? Or are you doing this because, like, practical stuff? Like, if you really want to improve your life and you really want to, if you just want to straight up be like, I want to be powerful, I want to make more money, I want to be this, I want to that. If you have the why, then finding the how is more is easier, because you'll already know what your what your goal is. And your
Right.
goal will change, you know, as you evolve, your goal may change, but coming onto the left-hand path for no reason, just to say, oh, I want to be left-hand path, is not going to help you, you know, because it's an introspective type of a thing. So you're doing work that we do on purpose that seems crazy. We break ourselves, we burn ourselves down to embers for on purpose. We drag ourselves through the mud. We are like, we face our stuff, like the things that you have in your past that you don't necessarily resonate with, or things that you've done, like you have to forget. There's such deep forgiveness, there's such deep work, there's such deep, like, it's work, it's hard. So you don't
Yes.
do it because you don't want to do it because you just think it's, you know why, and then choose that why every single day, because you're going to want to give up. Don't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how how famous you are or how smart you are. One day you're going to be like, I just can't. I can't. And you have to, like, choose yourself and choose your advancement over and over again. Like, you want to advance. So yeah,
Right.
that's why.
No, that's good. And yeah, I think Hollow Brigade, he's there. I assume that's here. I got to stop assuming, I think. But yeah, they're good points. And I always say, look, if your intent is to better yourself and learn, I always say the first step is knowledge of self. If that is placed above everything, all the other stuff comes. To me, that's the most important thing. As long as you're not coming in out the gate on all the superficial stuff. Yes. So, but good advice. So we have some more questions here. Adversarial Divine Innovations is having issues with the Wi-Fi in Puerto Rico. So we'll see if she can get that fixed. But we have a couple more questions for you here. Let me back down, bounce back, go back up. Thing jumped on me a little bit. Hold on. Okay, this is from Atlas NYC. What are some of your preferred methods guys can use to connect with the fiery feminine Kundalini force? That's the question.
The Kundalini force, now that's a whole different thing. So, you can view the Kundalini as your internal power. You can view it as a cultivated power, or something that you've always had. Like, there's a lot of, like, descriptions of the Kundalini, but in the way of talking about, like, it in a feminine aspect. The way I'm talking about it in a feminine aspect for a guy, it's really embodying, embodiment. It's just like we touched on, like, deific masking. It's like coming up with your explanation for what you deem fiery feminine, and then coming up with the way that translates into how you work with your Kundalini. So if you are working with a goddess that is a fire goddess, or a goddess that is associated with a dragon, or a goddess that's associated with a serpent or something like that, like, you can use those aspects to kind of power that work. Right. There's also goddesses that work with you in the process of awakening your Kundalini, or you can choose a goddess and follow her path to be able to find that. So yeah, I think it's all in your definition, and then using that energy to work your own power.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so hopefully that helps answer your question. Next question is from Beast of the Laboratory. What would you say are are some of the finer points of demonic invocation? I'm sorry, what would you say are some of the finer points of demonic invocation? Just want to make sure I had the question clear.
Okay. So demonic invocation.
Correct.
So invocation is a practice that connects you to the energy of what you're invoking on a spiritual level, on a psychic level, on a all the way down to like your makeup, your DNA. Like invocation is to imbue yourself with the spirit. So if we're talking about demonic invocation, if we're talking about working with our, if we're talking about working with our personal daemon, when we invoke the daemon, we are tapping into the part of us that knows our everything. That is our highest self. That is our guide. That is the part of us that is pure, that is perfect, that is all everything that we will all ever be. It is the part that is eternal. So we're tapping into our eternal frequency when we are doing an integration with our demonic with our personal daemon. If you're working with another spirit, if you're working with a spirit that is something else, that you're doing an invocation of, we are taking in the aspects of that spirit. So we are trying to reach self-deification, because self-deification is the goal, right? So we're trying to deify the self. So we are taking in aspects of that deity in an invocation space and fusing our power. We're fusing. As I invoke, I venerate, and as I invoke, I imbue myself with that power, like I'm saying, but it's knowledge. Like you invoke because there's not gnosis floating around. You need to invoke, you need to bring that in so you can, have the mind and be able to to be able to get the most out of working with that spirit. Like you have to invoke, and then that also teaches you how to be a vessel and a conduit. So if you have like clairs, like if you working on your clairs, like your clairaudience, your clairvoyance, your clairsentience, if you have a problem developing that, do invocations. Like that helps to open up the channel. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah. And one thing I want to hope everybody's taking note of, and I'm hearing the verbiage that you're using, which is very important. You're saying the words honor and venerate, right? We're not hearing worship. We're not hearing any of those things that really aren't connected to this. And you've said that probably a couple of times. And that's key. Honor and venerate, right? We want to make sure that's how we're approaching when we're doing this work. It's a big difference from when a religious person or coming from a religious perspective of worship. It's not the same thing. I just want to make that clear and point that out. All right, we have a couple more. All right, I'm gonna give you guys a look. I guess everybody's too scared to come in live, man. I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. I put the link in there multiple times. If you want to come in, ask a question live. If you don't want to be seen on camera, if you're missing some front teeth or you're looking crusty, just turn the camera off. You can ask a question. I'll take a couple more here. And then I guess after that we'll maybe close out. Not to just keep this thing, but I'll give you guys opportunity. This is your chance. But we do have a couple more questions in the chat. Let's go to that. Oh damn, skipped on me. I'll just keep going through the chat. All right, this is from Live Love Freedom. What is the dark feminine and what can women do to embody her? It sounds like maybe that's from a newer person. I know that's, again, pretty wide question. So again, the question to you is, what is the dark feminine and what can women do to embody her? That's the question.
Well, I will give you the short answer on this because it's a huge topic, but the dark feminine is, in my opinion, it's typically talked about as being the aspects of women that are suppressed, the aspects of women that are not as light, not as accepted in Western society, not as sought after. Our deep aspects, our real guttural, primal aspects, our our creatrix. So to me, dark feminine is the primordial force of creation. To me, the dark feminine is the essence of the first mother, the essence of the creator and destroyer. We talk about these goddesses that are represented by the dark feminine, like Tiamat, Kali, Lilith. These goddesses are represented by the dark feminine. So the aspects of the dark feminine that are within you are typically in the beginning going to be aspects that you have probably been told that are not good for a woman to have, like that argumentative side, or that fire, or that forceful attitude, or that everything is a mask.
Right.
So working with the dark feminine, for a woman, is to uncover the mask of what you have been programmed and what you've programmed yourself to think, and find out what the power is behind it, and to learn how to use those aspects to your benefit. That's how I would say you work with it.
Yeah, and that's and again, to that person asking the question, that we could do a show on that for hours, but that's a good place to start. So we got a couple more here. This one, I want to make sure, to the person asking this question, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question. If I'm wrong, just clarify, type in. I think I understand the question based on the way you wrote it. And I know sometimes if we're not the spell checker. All right, so the question here is about baneful magic, Baneful. Baneful magic is being used in war all the time in history. So the question is the outcome of one side's curse in the battle subject to the perspective of the witch or sorcerer? I would say yes, based on the way the question is worded. So I just want to make sure you're clear on that question, Cosmic Serpent, or if you have any thoughts on it, or if you need more information on that. I think that's it. So I don't want to create confusion. But I don't know if you're getting a different perspective from that. That's the way I interpreted the question, though.
Can you ask me again? Can you read that again?
All right. So the person, all right, yeah. So the person is saying baneful magic, the practice of baneful magic. I guess through this person's research, is probably used through war throughout history, right? So the question being asked is the outcome of one side's curse in the battle, subject to the perspective of the witch or sorcerer who actually would be performing the curse or the baneful magic. In my opinion, I would say yes, if I understand the question. Now, I'm breaking it down because I don't want to throw something at you that could be maybe it's a little incomplete. So if you feel like you're not clear on it, I'll just ask that person to maybe type some more information in regards to that.
I think I understand, because I think I understand. And if I don't understand, whoever asked that, like, you can clarify. But if you're asking if the perception of the person that the curse is being thrown, the baneful magic is being thrown at, has an effect on whether the curse is effective or not, right, Banini?
Yes.
That's kind of what you think. Okay. Absolutely. Like you will. It's like, it depends on who you are, what you're doing, what your motives are. You can complete a working, and what you're doing is dropping pebbles into a lake. You can complete a working and then hear horrible news. Like, it just depends on what you are, who you are, and what you are doing. I feel like you do have to be of the frequency of the person that is doing the work on you to be able to receive.
I agree.
So, like, if you are not, this is not boastful or anything at all, but if you're not on my level, or if you're not in my energy field, or if I'm not even perceiving you, there's no way you can do anything to me, because I don't even know you exist. So it doesn't work. And people waste their candles, for real. They waste their candles, they waste their time.
That's right.
Because you got to think about it. That person ain't even thinking about you. Nothing's gonna happen.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, and that's that was and hopefully that we interpreted that question correctly. If we didn't, type something in at the bottom. if we were off base with that, but that's pretty much how I thought the question was. All right, this is a good question from Source Conduit. It's actually, I think it's a 2 or 3 part question, but it's a good question. The question is, how do you truly integrate feminine self? That's the first part of the question. And also added to that, I grew up with a warped example of femininity that caused me to be overly in my masculine, and it's hard to be comfortable in my femininity and accepting others. So having, I guess she added that comment, how do you truly integrate your feminine self when you've experienced what she just described?
I understand that. And the first thing you have to do in that aspect is to embody it's secondary to healing, I think. So I think that because you put that there, and that is a like a very like a marker for you, that the reason what you said was the reason why you have a hard time is because you have a warped sense of you had a warped sense of a feminine model when you're growing up. That's where you have to start, because you can't embody it until you're forgiving and you're getting over what happened there, because the essence of embodiment is to accept the whole. So we have to accept all of us, in order to be able to then tap into anything, because you can't you can't bring it in when there's blockages for that. So the first thing you can do is, like, I feel like would be to do, I mean, shadow work is such a broad term, but like to do the healing around what happened in that situation, and some really, really ask yourself some really hard questions. And then when you're prepared to forgive and forget, or move on, or use whatever that energy was to your benefit, then in order to embody the feminine totally when you didn't have a good model, that's why we have goddesses. That's why we have goddesses. That's why we have these beautiful examples of what divine feminine energy really is, what the creatrix energy is, what the, I'm in a, I have a death alignment, like what the death goddesses are about, like we have these beautiful examples that are not corporeal, that we can integrate into ourselves. That's what Baniti has videos on it, but we talk about consuming the gods. We talk about consuming that energy. So work with the goddesses. Do not necessarily create altars, but read their myths, write letters. Just be the goddess, and
Correct.
she will lead you to the place of being able to touch the feminine that you were not given that space when you were young. Because it starts when you're young.
Yeah. And I think those are good points, and especially Source Conduit, if you're coming also from a perspective, and I'm just assuming maybe you were in an environment that was extremely male chauvinistic. I don't know if you're saying that also from a point where you grew up around a lot of males who had maybe a chauvinistic perspective of females. So everything that Cosmic was just saying would apply to that. That's a good way to approach. All right, so hopefully that helps you. We got a couple more here. I'll try to get to a few more. We'll try to wrap this up by 10 o'clock. All right. Let's see. All right. So this one was from, where is it? Hold on. Jumped on me again. Let me just scroll down. All right. This is from Rising Serpents. Do you believe in Carl Jung's psychological philosophy? Does any of his work have any influence? So basic question is, what's your thoughts on Carl Jung's psychological philosophy? Do you, I guess, believe in it, or do you utilize it in any shape, form, or fashion?
Yes. So Jungian theory is kind of the basis of a lot of how I built my practice in the beginning. So I learned, like most people, went to the college of YouTube, and learned from some some practitioners here. And so Jungian theory is, I mean, people stray away from it because it's standard and it's taught in schools, and it's what your psychologist might be using on you. So people stray away from it. But if you truly want to integrate the self, you have to know the aspects of self. You have to know where you're going with it. And Carl Jung has a very clear path, a very clear uh couple pieces of writing, his literature. Everything is very, it's jumbled in the first. It's complicated at first, but when you get into the lingo, it's easier. I love. There's so many aspects, and there's so many people that I've watched and learned so much from. But there's a creator, a YouTuber. Her name is Kellyanne Maddox. She is the Four Queens. She used to be the Four Queens, but she is she gives a beautiful description of like the basis of Jungian therapy. What do I keep saying? Theory, and how you can use that practically. So if you're just starting out, check her out. I know that Baniti has information on his channel because he has delved into that theory as well. And it's a textbook thing, but it actually works.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, next question we have is from, well, now everybody's bringing in questions. We'll get through. Next question is from Libra Spirit. Have you worked with Kali, and do you see a significant difference between Lilith and Kali? That's the question. Have you worked with Kali, and do you see a significant difference between Lilith and Kali?
Yes, I have worked with Kali. And to be completely honest, I was in a group. The first time I worked with Kali, I was in a group. It was a group working. They were teaching Vedic science, and they were teaching and that was another group that I was in. That was very foundational for me. It's on like a Facebook group. Like literally, that was the very first time that I ever decided that I was going to venerate her and draw her and paint. So paint her, get a statue for her, and work with her. So everybody's telling me that Kali destroys your life. Kali's going to destroy your life. She's going to do this. She's going to make you, she's going to pull the veil off. She's going to do all these things. And it depends on you. Correct. And I think that people compare her to Lilith. They're two different energies, yes, but people compare her to Lilith in the fact that they are goddesses and they are energies of transformation. So Kali is a transformative energy that is meant to shake your foundation and to make you question your existence, because she is the darkness. Like Kali is what was before time. Right. So Kali is the before. So she makes you question your existence by what's going on in your life. Like, am I even in the right place? Not even in the right place physically, but like, am I supposed to be on this planet type stuff? So Kali is a very transformative goddess. I have not worked with her lately, but I have had some experiences that really did change me, my perception. My house didn't burn down, but I mean, I had some sleepless nights and all that. So yeah.
And I think the important thing you said in the beginning, it depends on the person and it depends on the approach. I think the destructive part comes in when people are not clear on the approach and the intent, right? Because they might be going in for a specific thing. Maybe they have, and I've used this before many times in the past, I've said this, they might be going into, maybe they're having financial issues, right? Or maybe they're struggling with their business, and they invoke Kali to open those paths, to bring whatever's obstructed, to remove it out of the way. And sometimes it could be a person, it could be a situation. Right. So it depends on the person based on the fact, their knowledge and their approach, because the destructive part comes in when you don't know what the fuck you're doing. That's the easiest way I can describe it. But yeah, good stuff. Let's go down. This is a good question from Beast to the Laboratory. What are some ways that men can begin to heal their feminine divinity where where things like abandonment issues are concerned? That's a good question.
So as far as men healing that aspect of them with like abandonment issues as the tone, like the first thing, like I was telling the other person, the first thing you have to do is, I'll say, tap into the part of you that responds to that. So where is that sore spot? Where is it in your energy field? What does it do to you? How does it make you react to things? Like just dissect it as good, because that's a inherently male trait, is to like see all the pieces laid out. So like lay everything out of exactly how you are affected by that. And then just like the other person, you have to go inward and begin to heal that aspect, not based on what anybody else did or what anybody else will do. Abandonment is rough. It's a soft spot. It's hard because it's really, really something that breaks you when you're in your developmental phases. So it's hard, it's hard to get over, especially if you have a strong connection. So you have to get in there to the sore spots and like heal them up first before you can move on from that. Um, the divine feminine is a nurturing, mothering, loving, caring, soft, generous, gracious energy. And just like I was telling the other person, working with some aspects of the divine, like working with, I don't say work with, I mean, there's motherly aspects of every goddess, but
Sure.
choosing a goddess that is of that nature and asking her to help you heal that and working through that goddess. That's why we have these external deities. Like, back in the day, like, okay, all of our crops died, so it must be a demon. Like, there it is. You know what I mean? Like, that's why
Yeah.
we have them, so that we can, like, use their aspects. We create these things that are larger than ourselves to be able to build. So
Yep.
using a goddess or a feminine aspect that will help you, that's known for that, is a good way to do it.
Yep. All right, we're going to take two more. We got two more here. I'm going to take these last two, and then we'll wrap it up. So, Adversary of Divine Innovations is having problems with the Wi-Fi, but she does have a question she typed in. The question is, how do you handle being a mom, a wife, a daughter, etc., on this path? Because let's be honest, we know. So, I guess whatever one of those perspectives apply to you, how do you handle that, being on this path, obviously as a female?
Mm-hmm. I think that with everything, just like with everything, there's balance and there's understanding. There is a balance and understanding that come first before any of those things. Because when you choose to commit to yourself and you choose to like actually find your way through your inner self, like to find your core of what and who you really are, you cannot do any of those things effectively if you don't work on that, because you've chosen it. So there's mothers out here that are beautiful, amazing, bomb ass mothers, bomb ass wives, bomb ass daughters, sisters that have no idea who they are. And that's their prerogative. That's fine. But when you choose the left-hand path and you choose to do this work, you have to show up for yourself. So being in a position of a woman that has to care for others, your work no longer becomes the great work just as it goes along. Your work becomes self-love, because now you are in charge of other people's lives. You know what I mean? So if you're on this path because you need to find your core and your center and your heart, and you want to get in there and figure out what's going on, you can't do your job effectively if you don't. So I think it's a balance, and I know that some of my girls that may be on here, I don't know who's on here, but I know some of y'all have witchy kids, you know what I mean? Like, incorporating that into your connection to your children and things like that. So yeah, it becomes a practice of self-love because you have other people to care for, it's very important.
Right. Okay, and then Rising Serpents. These will be the last two questions. One is actually directed at both of us, and the other one, we'll do the one that's at both. have you guys ever used the middle pillar? I assume you're talking about the middle pillar by Israel Regardie. I'm sure that's what you're talking about as a magical practice. I have in the past, going back years, even though that comes from the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn, it's you know, to me, I consider that stuff, it is what it is. So middle pillar, it's not dark magic, it's not light magic. I do think there's some good work in that, because you being that middle pillar, it does give you some good grounding information. It can be, in my opinion, for maybe, I don't want to just say a beginner, but it is a good foundational practice. I would, encourage anybody, if you're not familiar, I know a lot of people are familiar with Israel Regardie, but I would encourage people to look into it. So yes, my answer, I have used it before in the past, going back, a few years back. So now I'll let you answer. Have you used it? The question also is, have you used it?
Yes, and that was a foundation of my earlier practice when I was talking about going backwards, like learning things, the backwards way. But I have found that over my path, I do revert back to the middle pillar exercises sometimes, simply because you are building energy. Like when you read a working, or somebody tells you how to do a working and they say build the energy. Where? From where? Well, what energy? You know what I mean? Like if you don't have eternal power, you can't imbue anything. You can't enchant anything. You can't move any energy inside of anything else if you don't have internal power. So the middle pillar helps. Also, just real quick, you can modify the middle pillar to be whatever you want, because you're working with you're working with your connection to the divine, and you're just you're grounding. You can modify it. You can put demons there. You can put whatever. If you work with whatever you do, so modifying it is a great way to like start making your own meditations too.
That's correct. That's correct. And then this person's second question: how important would you say, and I'm going to tell you 150 million%, how important would you say meditation is in all of these occult practices? I just want to add this, and then I'll let you answer that final question. I just want to also add meditation and visualization are essential. It's something you should be practicing regularly. It's not an option. If you want to advance on this path, and there's a myth out there, I'm not saying, because this person's question has just sparked that, some people who are not familiar with this path don't realize we do more of these spiritual practices that they think, quote unquote, only New Agers and some of these lighter philosophy paths. We do all of those very important spiritual practices, but I can't stress enough in your ritual work that meditation and visualization is 100% important. So the question is, I had to add that in because that's important to me. How important would you say meditation is in all these practices, in your opinion, from your experiences?
Well, meditation is the practice of quieting the mind and centering yourself. And 99.9% of the work that we do is in here. So if it's cluttered and messy and monkey mind and you can't focus, you don't know what's going on, you are not going to be able to do any of this work. So you can buy 1,000,000 books, you can take 1,000 bajillion classes, get all the statues you want, wear all the beads you want. But if you can sit with yourself and be in each moment as it comes, then you are unfortunately not going to be able to focus on anything else. So I think that meditation is imperative. And if you don't have that down, like if you can't sit for I'll say, even if it takes you 15, 20, 30 minutes to get out of your body and into your energy field and not necessarily be like jittering, what do you say, thinking about ice cream? Like thinking about this and all that stuff. If you can't do that, or if it takes you longer than 30 to 45 minutes, you should stop everything and do that, because you will see so many more results from what you're doing. Meditation is imperative.
Yeah, and and actually the class that I talked about in the beginning when I was doing the announcements that we're doing on the 30th, which is class number 5, the Klapathic Yoga Kundalini Meditation and Awakening class, we go through a series of techniques in there. We talk about the importance of the meditational aspect. But we show you the right steps of how to obtain proper meditation, and concentration is first. Most people don't meditate effectively or successfully because their concentration is all fucked up. It's all out of whack. So we show you there's a process that leads up to proper meditation. There's a lot of people who think they're meditating, but they're doing basically contemplative thinking, and that's not meditation. It's a step to meditation. But yes, I would encourage people to enhance those skills, because in your rituals, meditation and visualization is most definitely key. All right. I think we're gonna stop there. We will get Cosmic Serpent back on. I know it's Sunday night. I don't want to stay on too late. I know some people might have to get up early in the morning, including myself. And we want to be respectful of that. We will do this again. We would definitely do this again. We'll get the Cosmic Serpent back. But again, check out, and then I'll let her have her final closing statement. Check out her social media pages, TikTok. I know she has a Facebook and the Instagram, Cosmic Serpent, on all those platforms. Also, you'll see on her page, she does do tarot readings. So if you're interested in that, reach out to her. You'll see, just go to her pages. You'll see what she does, what she offers, and what she's about. And like I say, hopefully this class here, this video, whatever you want to call it, this session here helped. And we'll get it back on. Can't cover everything in one night. But I think we covered a lot of ground. Maybe next time we could pick a particular topic or maybe narrow it down. I figured we do this first because this is a good introduction, give you an idea, and we'll go from there. Other than that, I'll give you the last word, Cosmic Serpent. Any last thing you want to say, and just remind people where they can connect with you.
Okay, well, I thank you for the opportunity for coming on. And I thank everybody that's watching. Thank you for the questions and everything. I do have an Instagram page, and I have, like I said, and I know the sister put the link in my link tree in the description. So thank you so much. And yes, I do readings, I do consults. I have, time to build with you if you're looking for some divine feminine guidance. I can give you from my perspective. I am heavy on the feminine sorcery, so that's pretty much my expertise when it comes to that. So I'm not an expert in anything else. So don't ask. I'll lead you to someone else that is very, more depth in that. But
no crazies, right? We filter out the crazies.
Right. Well, yeah, we filter them out. I mean, you can smell them, some of them, but we filter them out. And, thank you. And check me out. I am approachable. Inbox me if you have any questions, just always, just know that every single thing that we've talked about is obtainable if you're new. There's nothing that Baniti is doing or I am doing or anybody that you see is doing that's not obtainable if you're brand new,
That's right. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. We'll get you back here. We're going to talk. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, joining us. Appreciate you supporting all the platforms, the YouTube, Primordial Chaos YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, the Patreon. Definitely want to shout out all the Patreon supporters. I definitely appreciate you guys' support. So I'll see you guys on the next class on Wednesday night. And again, I want to thank the Cosmic Serpent for coming on, and further blessings to all you guys.